The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
Mining in the Ring of Fire could be a game changer, but not everyone agrees that's a good thing. Tonight, we'll hear from 3 First Nations communities who are not happy with the current trajectory. Then, why one of the companies staking a claim there sees the chromite deposit as an unparalleled opportunity that can work for everyone. But first up, Enbridge Gas offers its defense on the controversial Line 5 pipeline. It's Tuesday, April 4th, and that's ahead on the agenda.
In 2020, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer sought to shut down Enbridge's Line 5 pipeline, saying it posed an unreasonable risk to the Great Lakes. That shutdown has not yet happened, but there is ongoing litigation and political pressure on the 70-year-old pipeline that carries oil more than 1,000 kilometers from Western Canada to Ontario. Mike Fernandez is Senior Vice President of Public Affairs, Communications and Sustainability at Enbridge, and he joins us now on why the company stands by its pipeline and other plans. Mike, good to have you in that chair. Thanks for coming in. Steve. Just tell us a little, I mean, I suspect everybody's heard of Line 5, but just some of the other particulars. It starts exactly where and goes to exactly where?
Yeah, so it begins in Alberta and cuts its way, through Michigan and a number of Great Lakes states, and then back up through Sarnia. And along the way, it makes a lot of stops at refineries and major businesses and fractionators in order to fuel our lives.
70 years old.
70 years old, but consistently has operated well, and certainly well at the Straits of Mackinac, which have been at issue.
What kind of shape is it in for a 70-year-old pipeline?
Actually, extraordinarily well. When it was constructed at sort of a framework and a design that is as good or better than standards today. The walls of the pipe are actually thicker than most pipes in both Canada and the United States. It's made of the same steel as the bridge at the Straits of Mackinac. So it really has met the test of time. Now, there have been concerns at different times. We've had large ships coming through the Straits of Mackinac that have dropped anchor on the pipe at different times. We've seen sort of the anchors that hold the pipe in place have loosened at different points. They've had to be retightened, but thankfully there have not been major issues there other than a lot of concern.
Why should those issues not concern us?
Well, one, it has operated, as you stated, for 70 years and safely. That said, we're aware of the concerns. We spend a lot of money in order to assure the safety of the pipeline.
How much? Give me a hint.
So
how much?
Over $100 million.
Since when?
Over probably the last 5 years. And so we look at that and say, long term, let's make this easier on everybody. So in 2018, what we did is we worked with the state legislature in Michigan, and we set ourselves on a course to build a tunnel that would actually reside some 100 feet below the base of the waters at the Straits of Mackinac. And that's where the pipeline would ultimately be encased. So it would be out of the waters, so no issue in terms of spills into the water. Pipelines are embedded in tunnels all over the world. So this is nothing new.
Well, you heard what the Michigan governor had to say, though. She's not yet convinced. Why do you think?
Well, actually, she said what she would have liked to have done and what the Attorney General would have liked to have done is shut down the current pipeline. But she realizes there's great support for the tunnel. And in fact, 70% of all Michiganders today support the tunnel.
How do you know that?
Survey research.
You did some polling on it.
We did.
What question did you ask?
Well, we asked about the viability, what people thought of the viability of the current pipeline, which again, overwhelming majority supporting, and then 70% supporting the tunnel.
We have returned to this subject from time to time because, of course, this is a big deal for the province of Ontario, and we had some experts in our studio gosh, I can't remember how long ago it was, several months ago. Anyway, Warren Mabey, Canada Research Chair, Renewable Energy Development, Queen's University. Sounds like you know who he is. Here's what he had to say about this. We'll play this clip, and then we'll come back and chat.
Okay.
Sheldon, if you would.
I don't think it can prevent oil spills per se. It can minimize the impact of oil spills. Enbridge has a history, and a lot of people are aware of that history. They've had some fairly damaging spills, including the Kalamazoo River a decade or so back. There are a lot of people who are very concerned about what might happen should those automatic procedures not kick in as quickly as they could, or should somebody miss something, some important piece of data. So, I think that people are right to be concerned. This is a risky point in the line. There are multiple risky points in this line.
Okay, so the drinking water for millions of people, obviously there's concern. What do you want to speak to on that?
Well, I think, one, clearly there have not been spills from this pipeline. Secondly, the spill that he refers to, which is on a separate line, really ignited a transformation in safety for the company. It happened over a decade ago. And as a new employee, when I joined the company a few years ago, I was actually given a ring that was made from that pipeline. And there's a story behind it. And to force all of us, even those of us who aren't actually working on pipelines, to know that safety matters and it matters most.
A ring as in to wear on your finger?
No, it's really in a little box, and we look at it, we talk about the story behind it, and the lessons learned from that oil spill, and the cost of cleanup to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
So this issue is top of mind for you folks.
Absolutely.
Let me just fact check one thing with you, which is that we have heard critics say 1 million gallons of oil, I don't know what that is in metric, but we'll say gallons for now, has spilled from Line 5 at some point during the course of its life. True or false?
False.
False?
False in the way that it gets characterized. Context is everything. The reality is there have been spills while we've dealt with maintenance inside the gate on our property, but there have been no significant spills that have caused harm to other people's property or the environment in general.
No significant spills that have affected the Great Lakes? No significant?
None.
So some smaller ones?
None.
What are you prepared to do? I mean, you can be on top of everything and still you know what happens. Stuff happens, as they say. How prepared are you to respond to a catastrophic incident if it happens?
We control what flows through the pipeline. We have ways in which to dial things down very quickly and safely. The odds of there being any kind of issue at the Straits of Mackinac today are fairly slim, despite the political rhetoric.
Well, okay, let's talk politics for a second, because you've told us about the tunnel that you want to build in the lake bed underneath the Straits of, and we should remind people, you pronounce it Mackinac, even though it's spelled Mackinac.
That's right.
But it's pronounced Mackinac. Okay, this all hinges on an environmental review of Line 5, which has apparently been delayed by Joe Biden's administration at the moment. I gather it's, what, till 2025? So you're...
Well, yeah, so what's transpired here is, so we made a joint filing with the federal government and in the state of Michigan back in April of 2020. Seeking environmental permits to get this job done. We got the permit from the state of Michigan in 2021. So even Governor Whitmer's administration, who wanted to close down the current pipeline, why? In part, I think, because they're intent and urgent about, let's get on with building the tunnel. Let's make this, what Enbridge is saying is a safe pipeline. Let's make it even safer, and let's do it quickly. Fast forward to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They got the paperwork at the same time and all the geotechnical survey research that had been done. And they come back just 2 weeks ago and say, it's going to take us at least to the middle of 2025 to get the draft environmental impact statement.
So how are you dealing with that?
And so what that would mean, we couldn't put a shovel in the ground until 2026. And in all likelihood, the tunnel's not complete until sometime around 2030. And that's certainly not what I think Governor Whitmer wants. It's not what Enbridge wants. Time is money. And for those that are concerned that we need to address this quickly, you'd think, oh, we got to move on to the tunnel. And the Biden administration itself had reestablished a set of regulations that would have said in these kinds of cases that have relatively low environmental impact in terms of future state, they should approve in 2 years. And on top of it, John Podesta, who works for the White House on a lot of these matters, told a group of energy executives and government officials down in Houston a month ago that we need to move smarter, we need to move faster when it comes to low impact permitting. And so
the administration doesn't seem to
somehow the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing.
So talk to us about the impact. If you don't actually get shovels in the ground for another 3 years and this thing doesn't happen until 2030, what are the implications?
Well, the implications right now are one of cost, frustration probably by a number of different parties. And in some ways, it just becomes a noisier process by which I'm sure, opponents will continue to yell and scream.
If this thing doesn't happen on the schedule that you would like it to happen, does that put the viability of this 70-year-old pipeline in any more question?
Not really.
Not really is not a no.
No, but right now the pipeline is safe. We're spending millions of dollars every day, to go ahead and we've got a 24/7 operations center there at the Straits of Mackinac. We run inline and outside tests of the pipe periodically. We have that verified by PHMSA, which is the federal regulator for this. It's a big deal. And what you'd like to do is to think that our two countries agree on so much. We share the same values. You would like to think that we can come together and reach some agreement on this.
There is another group that we need to hear from on this, and that is 12 federally recognized Anishinaabe tribes in the U.S. And many more in Ontario have passed resolutions calling for Line 5's closure. Again, I want to play a clip. This is Michelle Woodhouse, Environmental Defense and Métis Water Protector, speaking to that. Okay, Sheldon, if you would.
The fact that this poses an existential threat to the way of life for the Anishinaabe people is unacceptable. This is an existential threat to anyone who's in the area. It's an ecological disaster in the making.
Does Line 5 violate treaty rights?
It does not, and it doesn't pose an existential threat. The actual impact on any land is less than an acre in order to build this tunnel to insert the new pipeline in. We've worked heavily and closely with a lot of indigenous tribes in the United States and Canada. Our last big project was Line 3 in Minnesota. That had a huge impact, a positive impact on indigenous communities throughout Minnesota. We had people working on the line. We had communities that were able to raise additional revenue from the line. Total impact in that state was over $400 million.
Do you know whether this subject came up during the recent meeting between your president and our prime minister?
Boy, we'd like to think so. It was not a part of the official agenda. But the announcement of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in terms of the lengthened calendar came out like a day or two ahead of their meeting. So I would think that there were some conversations. That said, even if they didn't talk within that meeting, this has been a conversation, as you know. Canada invoked the Transit Pipelines Treaty of 1977, and which essentially says that energy should flow freely across the two borders. What's interesting, by the way, about that treaty was essentially negotiated by the current prime minister's father with a newly minted Democratic president in Jimmy Carter. It also was approved, as they have to be validated by the U.S. Senate, by a very young senator from the state of Delaware by the last name of Biden.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. Everything old is new again.
There you go.
Let me ask you about Enbridge itself, because it is one of the largest renewable energy companies in Canada. It also operates the world's, I think, longest crude oil transportation system. And some people may see those as being in conflict. So what are you?
What we are is first of all, as an industry, we're an industry in transition, and we like to think at Enbridge that we're helping to lead that energy transition. So for the last decade or so, we've spent over $10 billion, and we're slated to spend $2 billion plus a year in order to invest in renewables, but also into new technologies that make what we do from a traditional standpoint cleaner and better.
And if you're trying to get to net zero, and yet you think there are still requirements to spend billions on current projects, do you, in effect, torpedo the chances of getting to net zero sooner by keeping fossil fuels alive longer?
No, and you know, part of the real issue is how do we reduce greenhouse gas emissions? If people were really focused and urgent on that, what we would be doing in Canada and certainly in the United States is spending a lot of time thinking about how do we displace the amount of coal that's being used across the planet, because we can quickly reduce greenhouse gas emissions by supplanting that coal use with natural gas.
Natural gas is better than coal, but it's still polluting.
Well, except that there are ways to improve, you know, and make that cleaner than it is today.
We shall see, and we'll stay in touch with this story. Mike Fernandez from Enbridge, thanks so much for coming into TVO tonight.
Thank you, Steve.
Recently, a contingent traveled to Ontario's capital city as part of the First Nations Land Defence Alliance to push back on mining development in the province. In part, they are reacting to excitement over a massive deposit dubbed the Ring of Fire, more than 400 kilometers northeast of Thunder Bay, that is rich in nickel, chromite, and other critical minerals. While a new deal between the province and 2 First Nations communities could be the beginning of a permanent road to the site, not all First Nations communities support this development, and some of them are with us tonight. Let's welcome Grassy Narrows First Nation Chief Rudy Turtle, Cecilia Begg, Head Councillor for Big Turtle Lake First Nation, and Chief Wayne Munoz of Niskandiga First Nation, who just finished his term. Thank you all for being here so much. I know you guys are very far from your communities. I want to start off with Chief Wayne Munoz. Tell us what has happened recently that created an urgency for you to bring your concerns about mining to Queen's Park last week.
Well, obviously, our First Nation has been very consistent with our position as it relates to our traditional homelands and the proposed plans that Ontario and the industry has on our traditional homelands. We have not provided our informed consent to these plans and developments that they're making. And when we joined our alliance partners here, our nations here, Chief Turtle and the other communities, I think it's an important point to bring out that our nations require us to be part of these plans. The decision-making processes of our communities has to be respected, and plans that the Premier Ford government has embarked upon, just tried to roll over and fast-track the process, is clearly a demonstration that they don't respect our rights, our traditional homelands, the people's right to have a big say on these proposed developments that are going to impact our way of life, not just today, but for tomorrow.
Do you feel like you have any say?
We don't have any say in terms of the ability and the opportunity for our First Nation people, just like our First Nations and other nations that we're with here, the opportunity for them to have a big say, more or less to provide their free, prior, informed consent of our people, to be able to do these things in our own languages, for example, to talk about what's going to impact, how are those plans and developments going to impact our way of life, our rights, our interests, and so on. So clearly that's something that we're very troubled by this current government and the way the industry is pursuing in accessing our traditional homelands. It's something that's very concerning for our people, and it's gonna impact our way of life. It's gonna destroy our animals. It's gonna impact our sturgeon on our river system, and we believe that our people should have a big say just like anybody else, because it's not just today we're talking about, it's tomorrow as well, the next generations.
Chief Turtle, I'm going to come to you. Tell me, what was the biggest concern that brought you to Queen's Park last week? What was there a final straw? What was it?
Well, as you probably are aware, that there's been mercury poisoning in our community. There's been deforestation, and finally, there's been hundreds of mining, staking claims in our territory, and oftentimes we just receive a notice that there's going to be a staking claim made at this spot.
Just a piece of paper.
Just a piece of paper, and that's not meaningful consultation. We would prefer that someone would, actually come and sit down with us, show us maps, and tell us what's really going on. Not just a piece of paper that arrives in the mail or a quick email saying, that's not enough. It doesn't really mean anything. So if you're talking about meaningful consultation, then they should be coming to our community, talking to us, talking to our technical teams, and really showing what's really going on.
Cecilia, you were there in Queen's Park last week, standing in solidarity as well. Tell me, what was it that brought you to Queen's Park?
We were informed that these two communities were struggling, and that they had raised concern over their lands and what was happening, and that they were asking for people to step forward to form an alliance. And so that was done. And our chief, Donnie, couldn't be here, and he attended the first meetings, and he's been talking with these people in the past. And so, having said that, other First Nations, like when KI first had encountered the issue with the Platniks, the mining exploration company that was there in the past. And all that created so much problem for us. And there was no consultation whatsoever at that time. And there was a blockade formed, and all kinds of issues were raised. And it created so much uncertainty and so much fear as to what would happen to our lands, our fish, our lakes, everything that we hold dear to us, our lands and the gifts of water and the trees and all forms of life. They were a gift from God, and we are there to make sure that these things are taken care of. We're the caretakers, and we're to stand firm in guarding what was given to us, and not only that, to preserve what we have, so the future generations could live in peace and in harmony with nature and so on.
Very good. I want to make sure that we situate not only the Ring of Fire, more importantly, where your communities are. So let's take a look at a map of the region that we are talking about when we talk about mining and the communities involved. There in the red is the very rich mineral deposit discovered in 2007. None of it is mined yet, but explored extensively. We see where the proposal road is. On the map are some of the First Nations in the region, but not all. The communities of Martin Falls and Webequie are in agreement with the assessment for the road. Niskandiga, not, and that is where Chief Wayne Muniz joins us from today, or has come to us today. Big Trout Lake First Nation to the northwest. Also the communities of Attawapiskat and Fort Albany on the shores of James Bay in the region. And Grassy Narrows is to the south, where Chief Rudy Turtle has come from. And the Ring of Fire, of course, more than 400 kilometers north of Thunder Bay. Now let's talk about mining and the communities affected by it all. Chief Muniz, your community, Niskandiga, is closer to the Ring of Fire. Tell us, in terms of the area itself, in terms of the most concerning part right now. We talked about informed consent. We talked about sort of the lack of consultation. We talked about sort of the environmental damage. What would you say is top of the list?
I think everything that relates to our communities, it's about our people, and it's about the way our people use our traditional homelands. I think that's a very important part. Back in August of last year, we went down to the proposed crossing. We took roughly probably over at least 60 people, maybe more, young and old, elders, children, land users, community members, basically to make it known that this is also the area that we really do cherish that area. And we started our sturgeon stewardship program back in August, which we were able to provide some information to the public, and I think that's an important part of our community. It's the preservation of our way of life. It's to ensure that our people are able to practice their traditional pursuits on the land, on the river system. The Ottawapiskat River system, there's only another First Nation that lives on the Ottawapiskat River system, which is Ottawapiskat First Nation, and us, Niskandiga. And we have an abundance of life. The river system is very healthy, and it's and there's a lot of life. There's a lot of moose. There's a lot of sturgeon. And imagine if development does occur without the informed participation of our people. Imagine where is the sturgeon going to go? Where is the animals going to go? How our medicines are going to be protected and preserved? And that's something that our community is really concerned about, because the way this system, the way this process, like these so-called environmental processes that are underway, they're flawed. They don't take into account the First Nations protocols, the processes that they have in place, the decision-making processes of our community, and that's something that's very troubling.
I want to play the other side here just for a minute. In terms of globally, Canada's mining industry is seen as one of the safest, and there is a quite a high standard there. Does that change anything for you when we talk about sort of the fears potentially that your community has?
What's going to change for us if there is going to be change, significant change to where we are and what we're currently on right now, is the opportunity and the ability of our First Nation people, not just our First Nation, the ability to have a say, to be able to provide their informed decision, to be able to provide their informed consent to these proposed plans and developments that are going to impact us. They're not going to impact us just today. They're going to impact us forever. Now, what's going to happen to the things that we cherish and we still do in our own communities, in our own families, in our own homes? That's what we're talking about here. If this continues the way it's going now, obviously our First Nation will unite, and we will stand firm on what we need to do in terms of standing together, standing in solidarity, helping our nations to make sure that their issues and concerns are known. More importantly, they have a big say in what's going to happen in their respective areas.
All right, Chief Turtle, I'm going to come to you. We talked about this. Free, prior, and informed consent is a specific right that pertains to Indigenous peoples and is recognized in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. It essentially allows Indigenous peoples to give or withhold consent on a project, and it may affect them or their territories, and that consent can be pulled at any time. Has any of that occurred?
I would say no, especially the tactics that have been used. As I mentioned previously, they're nothing more than short notice, an email. It's not sufficient. And
what would be sufficient?
Well, like I said, like a proper visit to the community, showing us their plans, like just bringing all the information that they have, and to go over that and to look over all the information so that we actually know what's going on.
So from what I gather, it's not necessarily, if they follow sort of the guidelines that you have, this is not a clear no. in terms of mining in this area?
What I'm saying is, if we have the proper information, we would make a better decision. But the fact is, they don't give us the proper information. It's just a rush job. But we've already, like our elders in the community of Grassy Narrows, they've already made up their mind that mining is not good for our territory because mining always scars the land. They have to dig in the ground. There's no other way. Like if they're mining for lithium, gold, or whatever, they have to dig a pit, right? They have to dig holes, and our elders don't believe in digging into Mother Earth and harming her like that. So the elders have already laid out their opinion, and to their knowledge, they don't like mining at all.
Cecilia, I'm going to come to you. In a press release from the First Nations Land Defense Alliance, it states that Ontario does not inform prospectors which First Nations land they are staking until after the claims are purchased. Tell us, how does that happen?
The information that wasn't provided to them, maybe because they didn't come to seek our permission, and the knowledge behind these lands that they're proposing to stake and to do their explorations on. And like we're saying, a face-to-face meeting and a general awareness of what mining is about and what they propose to do. It has to be based on respect, and for us to be able to understand, and if they're expecting us to give our answers as to what they're planning on doing. But then again, and the answer is firm, and it's obvious that, we can't allow any exploration to take place because of how much we value our lands and resources.
All right, I want to play a video. This is a video from JP Glado. He is Anishinaabe and the Prince of Mawekta Limited, a consultancy bringing Indigenous communities and business sectors together. Let's have a look.
We're not a monolith. Our communities have different socioeconomic backgrounds and aspirations, and we don't all get along all the time. We're just like any culture. We'll have the 20% for, 20% against, and the percentage in the middle that are trying to figure out which side they sit on. I mean, typically what's happening these days is we're required for 100% consensus.
So right at the end there where the audio cuts off, he says it's unreasonable standard of 100% consensus. I want to get your take on that clip there.
My take on it is, everybody has their own opinion, but clearly what we've been saying all along is the fact that our traditional homelands, our rights, our way of life is going to be impacted. Why wouldn't you want to reach out to communities like Nisga'a, to communities like Grassy Narrows or other communities that are not buying into what the status quo is? Like, you got to buy into this ring of fire. There's some communities that are on board, some communities that are not, and I think it clearly needs to happen where every community that's going to be impacted should be involved. And every community has their own ways, how they determine, how they decide on whether they support or not projects or processes or whatever it is. And that's what we've been saying all along, is we have our own processes in place in our communities. We have our ways of doing things. We want to do things as it relates to our traditions and customs, the way we've been doing it. We want to, like, when we meet with our elders, it should be done in our own languages and those kind of things. And I think that's how you build understanding, right. And that's how you build consensus in your communities, in your respective areas. And that's what we've been asking for. We've been very consistent in that, And then just getting back to when we visited the legislature, I think Chief Chris Munoz, Chief-elect that's starting soon, really sent a clear message to Premier Ford. What needs to happen? What needs to happen in order to begin those things on a right path? Right now, the path is not a respectful way of doing business or gaining that relationship with nations like Niskandiga. Our position is we want to meet with Premier Ford directly. I believe that's the statement he made, and that's something that the Premier and this government has to take notice and understand how they're going to do that. And we're not begging for a meeting. We're not going to beg for a meeting with him. But clearly, he has an obligation as a government to ensure that everybody is involved, including people that are not buying into whatever they're trying to do, and this ties in with our traditional homelands because it goes beyond just jobs and the prosperity that this government and the industry is being sharing to the public. Our nations have other things that we have to consider, our way of life, how we use the land, and how things like that work in our communities, and that's the opportunities that our people should be given. When we did our visit to the legislature, our communities brought young people, and there was a little girl, a 10-year-old girl, that spoke to the reporters after we went into the legislature. She was asked about those things, and she got emotional. She cried why it's so important to protect her way of life, to protect what she's also concerned about. So why would you wanna not involve her? Why would you not want to involve the communities that are actually raising those issues? The land gives us something else more than just a job and all that. It also gives us the substance of working through issues, like providing that healing within our souls, within our bodies, within our families. And that's what we also sometimes get misunderstood.
Chief Turtle, I want to come to you. When we talk about that 100% consensus, we talk about Martin Falls First Nations and Webequie First Nations, of course, are the two that have reached an agreement with the Ontario government about the road to the Ring of Fire in terms of an environmental assessment. Why is the way that they came to their agreement through consultation not satisfactory to you or to the representatives at this table?
Well, like I said, this is my third time saying, like, sending emails and a quick notice.
Was that the way that they did it to you?
I don't know their situation, but I'm speaking like what's been happening in Grassy Narrows. The way they've been approaching us has just been just a quick email, a short letter, and they call that consulting. And I can't accept that. It's unacceptable. And as I mentioned, it has to be detailed and thorough, and we need to know what's really going on, and we need answers every time they're proposing something.
When we talk about prosperity and sort of the numbers that have been thrown around the Ring of Fire, in quotes, have been in the 1 trillion, in the 90 billion. I gather that doesn't mean anything if the rules aren't followed. Both recent budgets, the provincial and the federal, show commitments to mining critical minerals that the global economy is hungry for. I'm curious, how will your communities withstand that pressure?
Well, it's a matter of how you define prosperity. To us, prosperity means living a good life and keeping our way of life. Dollar value is not always, that's not how we measure our prosperity. Our prosperity comes from the land, that we want to be healthy, have a clear mind, being able to live the life we used to live. That means hunting, harvesting, and stuff like that. And the other thing is that oftentimes in the past, Native people, First Nations, have always ended up on the short end of the stick. And I'll give you an example. Our First Nation, this is years ago, I think one of our chiefs signed an agreement with Nelson Granite. And Nelson Granite promised jobs for our people. They promised training. They said that there would always be people working at Nelson Granite. That only lasted for a few years. Now nobody is working at Nelson Granite. And the money they've been giving to Gracie is peanuts. It's only around $2,000 a year.
Wow.
That's not, you know. They always promise these things. They always paint a good picture, but it never turns out. And we're very suspicious. Every time a company comes to our community, we're very suspicious. We just say, you know. So we're not easily taken. Grassy Narrows is, we just won't be deceived like that anymore.
All right, Cecilia, the last question comes to you. You know, ever since the Ring of Fire was discovered, you have fought to defend. You even spent time in jail defending the land here. I'm curious, you know, how far are you prepared to go in terms of defending it, and really, what does this look like if they were to get it right? Is there a way that this looks right on all parts, and what does that look like?
Well, we had taken the first step a few years ago, and they still don't get the message. The message was loud and clear. We want to have a face-to-face meeting, to be respected as equal partners, and also to approach us at our level, and our people to be present, and also for our protocols to be respected. But we are still saying none of that. Whatever they told us at the end were accomplished, and that meant consultation, and you know, the protocols that the First Nations had developed. They weren't, after a while, they were just set aside, and you know, and here we are. And of course, emails, as we hear, and a piece of paper, that doesn't mean anything. Not everybody understands, not everybody gets emails, and then, you know, and if the government is paying for these to be happening just so they can gain more wealth for themselves, I guess you could say, because we're just getting peanuts no matter what the deal may be, and any programs that come our way, we're not getting, you know, the amounts that will help our communities develop, and also when they say you will get jobs, your community will get jobs, that doesn't happen. Even the smaller companies or whoever comes and works, it's only the manual labor that is the manual labor that we provide. That's it, and no training, no prior training. And if they're sincere about helping our community, you know, they should provide training and encouraging our people, not just, you know, as custodians or, you know, as maids. And so I feel that they need to really do a good study on and hear the people throughout the First Nations.
It looks like
we're not the only ones that say that, and we will stand firm by that. And I don't think any time in the near future that will change.
From what I hear at this table, the Ontario government has a lot of work to do with every individual community that has stake in it. Cecilia, Chief Turtle, Chief Munoz, I want to thank you so much for first coming down here. I know you guys are very busy, but I appreciate you sharing your insights and all of the knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Since the Ring of Fire's mining potential was discovered in 2007, several companies have tried to find the path to make the opportunities there a reality. Frank Smink is CEO of KWG Resources, a junior mining company working to develop chromite deposits there, and he joins us in studio. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
All right. So your company, KWG Resources, has a tagline in its email signature, Canada Chrome Corporation. I want to get an understanding of the mineral, chromite. How necessary is it to our day-to-day lives?
Okay, maybe let's do it this way. KWG is the only Canadian company that's in the Ring of Fire, and because there's chromatite there, Canada is full of rocks, and chromatite has chromite, and from chromite you derive the mineral chrome, and chrome, when alloyed with iron, makes stainless steel. The mineral, the chromatite rock, is so rich in chromite that it is almost 100% of value, and it would be shipped out whole to wherever it gets processed, which would be south along the Trans-Canada Transportation Corridor.
By rail. Okay. I want to talk about our neighbors to the south. You had mentioned them off the top, the U.S. Tell me why the United States in particular is interested in Ontario's chromite deposit in the area of Ring of Fire. We're talking, when we talk about other nations, South Africa, we're talking about China. There's large chromite deposits in those regions. Why is Ontario, why does the U.S. have eyes here?
Well, because it's nearby, and we're very friendly. This particular discovery looks to be something that can supply them with something they don't have for as long as a century and perhaps well into a second century. So that's the reason, and it's nearby, so it's not too far away from Detroit, where it might go to. If the U.S. is your customer, a number of things can happen. It occurs through financial mechanisms called a take-or-pay contract, which in effect bring the full faith and credit of the government of the United States or the agency designated to do the job into the project. And with that, you can monetize that almost immediately after signing the contract. And with that, we can then pursue our plan to share this, the benefits of this, the economic value of this enterprise fully 50-50 with the First Nations, subject to their free, prior, and fully informed consent. But that then could be immediately settled into a trust. The trust could generate its own yields and income, and that would be substantial income that could go and correct any number of desperately wanted things that need doing in the communities that are in the neighborhood of the deposits.
I want to talk about another relation, as you mentioned, for First Nations communities. Last week, members and leaders from Indigenous communities traveled to the legislature at Queen's Park as part of the First Nations Land Defense Alliance and to push back on mining development in the province, particularly around the Ring of Fire. What would you like to say to First Nations communities that don't share sort of the same enthusiasm for the chromite extraction?
I think the system is in place. So 5 years ago, I think it might have been 5 years ago today, we went from staking large claim blocks, often from helicopter, often without a visit with the local community, to map staking. And now the prospector can stake a claim that he wants on a map, and before anything can happen, there has to be a notice served by the mines minister on the communities in the area as to what is hoped would happen there. And so even earliest exploration cannot be done unless there's consent from the affected communities. So it is a process that it's an opportunity for an education process that didn't exist before. And I think if the explorers amongst us, engineers amongst us can properly articulate what might be available or what might come of this work, and share it fairly with the local people without interfering with their traditional lives and with those communities, then I don't know why. What I have heard from almost everyone within my First Nations contacts, which are quite large, is yes, of course we want prosperity. You know, we're not stupid. So I think it's the mechanism, but this is growing up in the last decade or so. It was quite different the way before.
I want to pick up on the staking process. I find it interesting, especially for people who aren't in the mining business, may have some interest in this. I'm going to pull up a statement from the First Nations Land Defense Alliance in a press release that they released. They write, prospectors have staked thousands of new claims on these First Nations territories since Premier Doug Ford came to power. They are exploiting Ontario's antiquated free entry mining system that allows companies and individuals to stake mining claims on First Nations lands from the comfort of their offices without gaining the consent of Indigenous people who live there. Take us through that sort of the stake claiming process.
All right. So now you go on to the government website. It's and it's very, very efficient, and it's live, and you can, if you have an idea of where you might discover a mineral, you can pay a fee, and on that website, stake the claim. You have a little bit of time to hold on to that claim, and then come up with a plan to try and find something in the claim. The whole idea of free entry is a little bit abused because without free entry, I mean, this goes back 5,000 years to the beginning of the Bronze Age. Every lord of every domain wanted his domains explored because whatever was found would become his, and the finder would get a royalty interest in it. So what we hadn't done well in Northern Ontario, can't speak for the rest of Canada, is explain that. And then, so it used to be that prospectors would go out and stake a 40-acre claim, and they would typically do it in winter on snowshoes when you could easily find the corners and mark them with stakes. A 40-acre claim, and he would, in his own self-interest, would go and have a visit with the local people to let them know he was out there, because if they didn't, he could freeze to death very quickly. We went from 40-acre claims to 630-acre claims, and we over time went from snowshoes to snowmobiles, skidoos, and later on helicopters. And yes, huge tracts of land were staked. That ended just as the map staking came in, and the requirement to stake your claim. You don't have to tell anybody where you're going, and the fact that you can do it from the comfort of your desk maybe should help. But then you immediately have to tell the chief and the council and of the local communities in a very wide radius, generally speaking. So everybody gets lots of notice that the staking has occurred, and what the hope for the exploration of that claim is.
You talk about the efficiency for a prospector sitting at their desk and being able to do that. You talk about sort of the safety if they, many decades ago, that you'd go out to the land, let the local communities know that you're out there for the safety of yourself. I want to look at the other side. The First Nations leaders that we spoke to also say that the Ontario government doesn't inform the prospectors of which First Nations lands they've claimed until after the stake has been made. Does that process need to change?
Well, I appreciate the point, but I think we touched on it. Free entry, if you have it could change. I suppose there's other systems. I can't see how any of us are going to be encouraged to take risks exploring if we have to first go and tell the chief, we want to stake a claim over here, and he'll say, why? And we'll say, well, because there's a gold mine there. And the chief's going to say, well, no, we're not, we're not letting that happen. But in the consultation process that I think we've learned increasingly how to do better and better, there's lots of opportunities to create the relationships to make an enterprise out of that. Mm-hmm. Free entry is free entry. I mean, the reason it makes sense and has done for 5,000 years is because it works to find things in the ground. I don't see the alternative.
Very quickly, 30 seconds or so left. What if First Nations communities, the concept of prosperity has nothing to do with your notion of prosperity. Instead, it's about leaving the land untouched and pristine. How might, and maybe not specifically, but the mining industry in whole, deal with that? You know, this is Ring of Fire 2007 we're talking about, right?
We share, I think all Canadians share that aspiration with the First Canadians. We love Canada because you can go hunting and fishing here. My grandchildren love to go fishing and camping, and we all want to leave the land pristine. And we, in fact, want to support traditional lives and ways of living. But I don't think mining, as practiced in 2023 and beyond, is going to have nearly the impact that it has had in the past. You know, forestry, paper mills especially. But underground mines, I mean, you'd see very little on surface from an underground mine. If, you know, and that prosperity should be shared, I don't see why it wouldn't. If you could create a community bank, you know, take the Mattawa group of nations, if they had their own financial institution, to me that, you know, and a place that they could get mortgages, you know, and I know they're struggling to find money to create housing in every one of those 8 Mattawa communities, you know, so this is a way of doing that. That's all.
Frank, we're going to leave it there.
All
Thank
right.
you so much. Really appreciate your time, and look forward to see where things are in a couple of years. Appreciate it.
Pleasure, my pleasure.
That is the agenda for Tuesday, April 4th, 2023. Tomorrow, Steve finds out why there's some urgency to addressing teen mental health. Also, author and clinical psychologist Lisa D'Amour on her new book about the emotional lives of teenagers. I'm Jan Jagannathan. Thanks for watching TVO and for joining us online at tvo.org. And Steve, we'll see you again tomorrow.